that we're making.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of protein, I'm going to fast forward into the book again. I want to hit the highlights of this. Protein, more than just a macronutrient. Roughly 60% of your body is water. Half of the remaining 40% is protein. Your bones, ligaments, tendons, liver, brain, skin, and fingernails are all built from proteins. But this vital macronutrient is responsible for far more than just physical structures. Proteins are the master regulators of all that is happening in your body, controlling function in all tissues and organs, including muscle. They include enzymes, a class of proteins that catalyze all chemical reactions within the body. Proteins also support energy production and cell-to-cell communication. Proteins facilitate critical cellular functions, including balancing hormones, and serve as vital immune system mediators. Antibodies that inactivate pathogens as part of your immune response are a type of protein, as are many hormones, including insulin. The thyroid hormones, which help regulate your blood glucose and metabolic rate, can impact growth hormone secretion and bone health, are made from amino acids provided by proteins. The brain uses protein-rich foods to produce neurotransmitters such as epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin, which are essential to brain cell communication. These chemicals are directly linked to neurological development, sleep, and mood regulation. Benefits of protein-forward diet: balanced blood sugar, increased energy, mental clarity, decreased body fat, improved body composition, reduced cravings. By now, I hope you're clear on the vital role that protein plays beyond just building new muscle. There's no getting around its role in all the body's systems. These functions make protein critical for longevity, metabolic function, and quality of life. And here's why you shouldn't ignore protein. It is essential for cellular functions, influences metabolism, needed to build physical structures, impacts sleep and mood, needed for brain, bone, ligaments, tendon, skin, and fingernails. So these are the things that protein are doing. And it's weird that it does all this. And like I said, for back in the day, it wasn't really part of the conversation other than we're drinking some protein shakes when we're lifting heavy to get a little bit stronger. But other than that, conversation used to be about fat and carbohydrates. No, fat's bad, no, carbohydrates bad, but your emphasis is protein forward.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting. There is something called the protein leverage hypothesis. Have you heard of that? I would have been very, very
Did you say protein lever?
Protein leverage hypothesis. And this is the idea that one reason obesity is the way that it is that a human will feed until they get enough protein. So if you are eating highly processed foods that are lower in protein, you will continue to eat to meet this protein need, because again, we eat protein, but we really need those amino acids. There's 20 different amino acids. Nobody, I don't think on the podcast wants to hear about all 20, but so I'll save everybody. They're in the book. So I'll save everybody that painful discussion. But at the end of the day, these amino acids all do different things. And so we're eating for individual amino acids. And that is something that we have to appreciate. And that is where kind of this idea of being protein forward comes in, is that a human will feed to get those amino acids.
And keep feeding. And
keep eating. Mm-hmm. There's a certain, and we see it across animals, that they'll go for, closer to 20% protein. Again, humans, we can go higher, certainly. And I typically don't think about it as a percentage. It's really a number. We shouldn't really think about, when we construct a diet, we shouldn't necessarily think about percentages, because again, if someone is eating 1,000 calories versus 2,000 calories, the percentages are going to mean different things. Mm-hmm.
And in the book, you start talking about how much protein you should aim for.
Yeah.
So what's your calculation?
Well, I'm just going to say this. It should be around 1 gram per pound ideal body weight. Mm-hmm. So if you are, how much do you weigh?
225.
Great. 225 grams of protein, or at least 200. Mm-hmm. Do you know how many grams of protein you eat?
No.
Be interesting to see what you naturally are doing.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see. What'd you say? 200? Let's say you're supposed to get 200.
Yeah, I think we should track it and do and see.
I eat a lot of protein.
Great.
Yeah, I eat a lot of protein. I have protein shakes. I have protein ready to drinks, and I eat steak, and I do that a lot. And I do that on a daily basis. So we're over here eating protein. But I'll get back to you.
I'd love to know.
I just looked this up the other day. How much protein is in a 16-ounce ribeye? Do you know off the top of your head?
Around, so if you multiply what's 16 times 7, what is that number?
Well, now we're doing math.
Okay, so 16 times 7, so 7 is 2, 7, 8, 92 grams of protein.
Yeah.
So it's probably a little bit lower because of the fat, so the 16 ounces will be a little bit lower.
The protein
my guess is I'm probably going to be pretty close. I bet you I'm pretty close to 200 a day, which is pretty cool.
Which is very interesting. And I will mention that the RDA, again, the recommended dietary allowance, is set at 0.37 grams per pound.
I'm protein forward, and I've been protein forward for a long time.
Like it supports training, it supports recovery, it supports all of the things, and you've tuned out the noise and likely done what you felt the best as.
Do you feel like, because you said ideal body weight, like let's say, okay, I'm 225 as well, but I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, wait, if I was like 220 or 215, that would be really my ideal weight. Is that kind of how I can, because a lot of people, that discrepancy is bigger, you know?
Yeah, you're pretty close and really fit. Again, it is... So
Friday, you're gonna talk trash right now.
You guys are terrible.
Yeah, when the mics are
off. 1 gram per pound ideal body weight would work, but there's what I do want to point out is there's a lot of myths around dietary protein that if you were to over consume protein, which we actually don't have a number for that. Let's say you told me you're eating 500 grams. I mean, I couldn't say that for some reason that would be bad. I wouldn't have evidence to support that. There's feeding studies that go above, closer to 3.3 grams per kg.
And what does that do to somebody?
Nothing. In fact,
no bad outcome?
It's improved body composition. So they have lost body fat and they have increased lean mass. There's no data to support that protein is bad for healthy kidneys or bone. Those are the common myths. And for any women listening to the podcast, it's not going to make you bulky, which is all we ever hear about. But it would be very difficult to overeat protein. And it's also very difficult to gain weight on eating protein. And the average male is eating around 100 grams of protein a day.
Oh.
That's what the average is eating.
Yeah, that's not going to be good. Now, does that number go up if we're working out really hard?
I think 1 gram per pound ideal body weight will cover you.
Okay.
But you could go higher. You, depending on if you eat carbohydrates or not, that is good for muscle glycogen. It's good for recovery. So it's just a matter of how many calories that you can allot to. I was listening to one of your guys talk downstairs. He's like, I'm eating 5,000 calories a day.
He's probably training super hard. Yeah. Maybe getting ready for a fight or something.
I think he is.
And maybe even like 5,000 calories a day, he might be. Yeah. Like sometimes you have guys trying to maintain their weight through fight camp, and it can be hard because you're doing 2 days, 3 days.
Totally.
Like, it's a little crazy.
And so for how you would allocate calories is I wouldn't go below 1 gram per pound ideal body weight because he's also going to have to get calories in. Whether it's carbohydrates or fats, he's still going to have to get more calories.